Okay, at this time, I would like to introduce our spotlight guest, Sherrie Eldridge, and read a little bit about Sherrie to let you know. For well over 2 decades, Sherrie Eldridge has offered her unique voice with the adoption community as an established author and international speaker. An adoptee herself, Eldridge has the ability to see life through the eyes of an adopted child. In her 7 published titles, she has shared her passion for validating adoptees' life experiences and her desire to help adoptive parents better understand and meet their adopted children's emotional needs. Her best-selling work, 20 Things Adopted Kids Wish Their Adoptive Parents Knew, is considered required reading by many U.S. adoption agencies. In 2010, she was named Indiana's Congressional Angel of Adoption by the Honorable Dan Burton, Indiana Congressional Representative. Eldridge is widely recognized and respected as a compassionate advocate for adoptees, cultivating understanding about adoption's challenges and opportunities for all those whose lives have been touched by it. Sherrie is also a big supporter of Indiana Adoptee Network and a regular attendee. And Sherrie, we would like to welcome you to tonight's episode.
Well, thank you, Marcy. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be the speaker tonight. I love Indiana Adoptee Network because I'm so proud of where Indiana is. I mean, Marcy and Pam and the other team member.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have brought Jennifer Falsing. They have brought Indiana so far by getting us open records, and they worked really, really hard. And I remember going with Pam to the Congress, or to like the Congress meetings down below in the Capitol. And man, you would think she was a skilled lawyer, the way she operated that whole system. So anyway, it's fun to be back together with my dear friends. And Marcy is a great author. I've been able to encourage her a little bit. So we've got some history, and it's good to be back together. So thank you for inviting me. I've really been looking forward to it. Well, you know, as an author, I thought I'd written every book I ever wanted to write. And then something happened deep inside of me that made me think that I might have something that would be of value to both fellow adoptees and also adoptive moms that are hurting. And so I began preparing a book proposal, and if you've ever tried to do that, it's a lot of work. And I could not get my focus right because I was talking to adoptive moms, but also giving the adoptee perspective. So I didn't know who my audience was. I kept moving all over the radar. And finally, I ended up with, you know, making the focus the adoptive moms and foster moms, but also sharing my perspective in my relationship with my adoptive mom, whose name was Letha. So that's kind of the crux of the book and how it's begun. It's based a lot on my relationship with my adoptive mom, with Letha. I was a rascal of a kid. I mean, I was one that I'm sure my mom didn't know what to do with me. I was pretty wild. I mean, I would shove my fist through the refrigerator door, and, you know, I was just a banshee kid. And I did not like my mom. I don't know why. I didn't like her. And we had a very stressful relationship over many decades. And I've always wondered why that was. And I found the answer to why that was within the last couple of years. And that's why I'm so eager to share the answers that I found with everyone involved. Like I said, I can't write the birth mom perspective, I mean the adoptive mom perspective, but 50 adoptive moms have come on board with me to give me their insights, Lauren, and their wisdom. And I write them questions and they write back to me. And we have called them yellow slicker moms because when rejection reigns in their home, they can put on their yellow slicker and be protected and not give in to the trauma that is around them. So that's their name, and I just love them, and I think that's just the beginning of something really wonderful, yellow slicker moms. But anyway, I owe a lot to them, and Lauren is one of those moms, and,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad you could come tonight, Lauren.
Oh, this is great. This is really great.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to meet face to face, isn't it?
It is wonderful.
Yeah. I can share though how adoptees can heal from a painful past, because I have experienced that within the last 2 years. I know I'm not the only adoptee that has experienced this. I mean, out of the 8 million adoptees in the United States, there's a
Wow.
small percentage of adoptees that have healed from adoption trauma and loss. But none of them are writing about it. So it seems to be an area that nobody wants to talk about. When I did the research for the book, I mean, it's really is a hot potato in the world of adoption. I mean, think if you ran an adoption agency and you said to the prospective parent, well, you know, your child may get angry with you or whatever, you may have struggles that way. It probably wouldn't go through. So we can understand why, you know, it is a hot potato. And, you know, adoptees haven't talked about it much because nobody's healed. And adoptive moms haven't talked about it because no one is really totally healed there. You know, some people have said to me, why are you centering on the moms? Why don't you also include the dads? And that's a really good point. However, I intentionally focus on the moms because they really get the brunt of it. I mean, even when, you know, outsiders are what do I want to say? When outsiders judge and criticize, they are the ones that get it, not necessarily the dads. So that's why I'm focusing on moms. And about 2 years ago, I did a convention convention with foster moms from Pennsylvania. And, you know, they wanted me to share the memories of my mom along with how I saw things as an adoptee. And I was so touched by their hearts. I mean, one adoptive mom came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes and said, you know, I say this, is that okay? Am I doing the right thing? And, you know, tears are coming down. So I got to wipe the tears off her face. It was really cool. But anyway, that's kind of how the focus has developed over time. When you want to write a book and have to write a proposal for an agent, because it's going to be sold publicly, you need to find evidence that it's a much needed subject. And so I started writing about this topic on my blog, and I could not believe the hits that I got. I mean, they were astronomical in my world anyway. They were, I'm sure in some people's it wouldn't be, but it was just, I mean, it zoomed up. I couldn't believe it. And so the need is definitely there, but nobody's talking about it. So now my agent, you know, she's been kind of, you know, biding her time with me, and she's asking for the stuff. But I keep thinking, I'm going to be 75 years old next month. I can't write a book anymore. I can't be under a deadline like I used to be. I don't think I can do that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write like 4 or 5 chapters to submit to the agent so that if it gets bought, I only have to write, it's going to be a 20 things book. So if it gets bought, then I only have 15 chapters to write, which would be by about one a month, and I could handle that.
Wow.
So anyway, that's kind of the way it's developed. I thought you might find that interesting
Wow.
as a background. So in our time together, I'm going to talk about 3 different things. I'm going to talk about who can heal. Second, what needs to be healed and what doesn't need to be healed. And third, what brings about healing. So those are the 3 divisions that we're going to talk about during the next time that we have together. So who can heal from our past hurts? I mean, don't they just run through our minds? And sometimes we feel it feels impossible to conquer some of the painful memories that we have. Let me just define, first of all, what healing means. This is my own interpretation, and remember that I'm just one adoptee. I am one individual. I'm not speaking for all adoptees, and I'm not speaking for all birth moms. I'm just sharing my stuff with you tonight, okay? All right, so for me, healing does not mean that subconsciously everything is wiped clean of my subconscious and conscious, brain, body, whatever that Bessel van der Kolk talks about. Doesn't mean that that's all removed. No, it's still there, even the stuff that's submerged underneath. What it means instead is remembering both the past and present without getting triggered back into trauma. So we can remember what happened and not get just totally freaked out or cry uncontrollably or have a temper tantrum, however it is that we melt down. So that would be my idea of healing for both moms and fellow adoptees and foster kids, who I love also. So, so that's the definition. That's my definition of healing. Okay, Sherry's 2 cents, Dr. Sherrie. So, as we look back in history, there are many people who have helped us along the healing journey. For adoptive moms, there are the Berries. Do you know about the Berries? Kristen and Mike Berry in Confessions of an Adoptive Parent. They are monumental. They are incredible parents and authors. They have 8 adopted children who are incredible children also. So they have a wonderful, wonderful influence for parents. Jane Schooler has written a wonderful book for adoptive parents. She is an adoptive parent. Karen Purvis, the late Dr. Karen Purvis, all the trust-based stuff that she did at Texas University is just her wonderful legacy to the adoption community. Also, Brian Post, who is an adoptee, who has wonderful, wonderful insights in writing. He has a blog post as well. Jenny Owens, who is a friend, a colleague, she was the one that invited me to speak in Pennsylvania. She wrote the brilliant book called Dancing with a Porcupine. And it's her story of being an adoptive mom and dancing with kids who have come from trauma. And I would highly recommend it. And then Lisa Qualls. Lisa also is an adoptive mom. She worked very closely with Dr. Karen Purvis, and together they came up with a lot of stuff before Dr. Purvis died. And so they have put this into a book called The Connected Parent. So I would highly recommend that as well. But those are all wonderful contributors to our healing journey as adoptive parents. Now for adoptees, we have wonderful authors too. When you think about Daniel Hughes, Dr. Daniel Hughes, Betty Jean Lifton, the great Betty Jean, John Bowlby. But I think a lot of us really love and continue to love Nancy Verrier. the author of The Primal Wound, Understanding the Adopted Child. We carry that around like a security blanket. We have the pages dog-eared on it. We carry it everywhere we go because guess what? She has validated our primal wound and we don't feel crazy anymore. Somebody has finally heard our cry and validated that we have a reason to cry. And so we have gained so much from Nancy Verrier. She always says that healing comes from validation. And that's what she did for us. She really validated the wound. However, there's much more to healing than validation, much more. And you know, I am so thankful to Nancy Verrier for writing that book. We all, I bet you all us adoptees say kudos to her, you know. We are so thankful for you and how far you brought us. But you know what, it's time for us to move on because there's more. There's more learning, there's more growth, there's more healing, there's more surfacing of repressed emotions that can be redeemed and recalculated and refurbished. We want more. I want more. Don't you? You guys, don't you want more? I do. Now, when you look at medical history or medical science, there's a great way to demonstrate that there's more to healing and validation. Suppose, for example, that somebody went into the ER, had a big gash in his leg or his chest or something, and the ER doc came in and said, "Man, that's a doozy of a hurt there, buddy." And then he left. You know, it was like, okay. But we know the doctor wouldn't do that. The doctor would come in and he would sew it up or whatever he needed to do. And then he would talk about the healing process. He would say that new skin will develop where that wound actually is. But first, there needs to be a little umbrella that will develop over that wound, and it will keep it safe. It will foster healing down beneath. And that little umbrella is called a scab. Isn't that cool? So, you know, you've got that scab on the wound, and then when it gets dry and everything, it comes off. And what's underneath? It's new skin. And where the wound was, guess what's there? It's a scar. It's a scar. Just recently, I saw a meme of a woman close up her face like this, and over her cheek was emblazoned the word survivor. And you know, I think that says a lot. That's what I want. That's what I want for my life. That's what I want for your life. That's what I want for my fellow adoptees whom I love, and these birth moms who I also adore. So let's agree that we can move on and we can be thankful and still move on, right? Okay, so here we are. Let's talk, oh, wait a minute. First, I was gonna share with you the different things that scars do. Every scar tells a story that you have survived. Scars are like battle wounds. They show off what you've been through and how strong you are. Scars are proof of healing, and every scar you have makes you who you are. Is that not cool? I love that. I love that idea that we can all be survivors. Not somehow, but really in a cool, triumphant way. Okay, so what needs to be healed? Second division here. What needs to be healed and what doesn't need to be healed. Okay, what doesn't need to be healed, and adoptees, you may be surprised at this. I was. What doesn't need to be healed is adoptee anger. Did you know that? I mean, I have listened to adoptees at conferences for decades saying, when am I ever going to get over this anger? I just wish I could heal from this anger. And, you know, they just feel impossible. They feel like it's impossible to ever, quote, get over their anger. Some of us wonder if it's a character flaw. Like, you know, maybe there was something in my birth family way back and wherever, and that person was an angry person and I inherited that DNA. That's the way many adoptees think. I do anyway. And then we look around, we adoptees look around and we notice that our friends aren't nearly as angry and upset as we are, especially at our moms. I mean, I noticed that in my relationship with my mom, that my friends didn't compare to how I felt about her. So we have to remember that anger is a gift from God. It's how He made us. We don't have to feel guilty about being angry. We don't have to try to get rid of it. We have to realize that anger is our cry print. Do you realize what I mean by that? A cry print? Now Pam's got these new babies, you know, these new grandbabies. And so when they cry, they're communicating to Pam or the mother or dad what they need. And so we adoptees have a cry print, and I believe it's anger. We communicate how much we are hurting by our anger. And so it's important to realize that it's nothing wrong with you. You know, I really, really struggled with that. And in my book, that is great news. I mean, yeah, it's great, great news. I don't know how many adoptees are listening here. Do we have a lot of people or not? We have 37 participants. I can't see all of them anyway. But yeah, we don't need to heal from anger. We just need to realize, let me give a quote here. What we need to heal from is hate. Yeah, hate. Now, our reaction might be, mine was anyway, I don't hate. I don't hate people. I'm a good person. I'm a person of faith. I don't hate. Well, I had a lot to learn. And, you know, I got an MRI of my adoptee heart, and I found out that there was a lot of hate in there. I think I hated my first mother for giving me away. Excuse me, that's adoptee lingo, for relinquishing me. I hated my birth mom, or my adoptive mom, because she wanted to take her place, and I didn't want her to take her place. I wanted my first mom. And in all the research that I've done so far for this book, you know, I just want to write a big, bold thing that says there's so much involved in the adoptee's loss of the birth mother. She's our first love. I mean, for me as an adoptee, I mean, I grew in her womb. Her womb was my first home. And her heartbeat set the heart, you know, the rhythm of my life. Her voice assured me that she was there. I mean, it was just, to lose her is just monumental. It is, it's monumental. And so I had a lot of hate at her for for giving me up. But then at the same time as I was growing up, I fantasized about her. That's what we do. Many of us do. We fantasize about our birth mother being a queen up in a palace, you know, looks lovely, and we're going to go visit her. And when we graduate from high school or college, she's going to come and be there and be so proud of us. But underneath the fantasy, I propose that hate is beneath that. And that needs to be healed. That needs to be healed. See how complicated it is? I mean, it's really, really complicated. we adore our first moms, but yet we're mad at her. We hate her. So dealing with all that just for an adoptee is a lot. It's really a lot. Okay, for adoptive moms, I think the thing that I've learned anyway in the research is that they may hate their kids. Adoptive moms may get so pushed to the end that they're triggered by their kids' reactions of rage and hate and violence, that they can't even sleep at night. I mean, the pain that these moms write to me is like unbelievable. I mean, I had no idea that it was as deep as it is. Several of them said that, you know, I just assumed, I told God I wanted to die before I woke up the next morning. That's how deep the pain is for adoptive moms, because they so much want to give this child a home, to be a haven of love for that child, and you know, make up for any kind of trauma that they've been through. They want to just nurse them along and just, you know, give them the very best that life has to offer. They are all very equipped moms. I mean, they have done their work, and I have named them the Marine of moms, because adoptive moms are probably the bravest people I know. And they would not want me to say that about them, because they don't like to be called brave, and they don't want anybody to act like they're doing anything different than they would do anyway. But they are brave, and they have willingly taken on a challenging life goal, which I really admire them for. So what needs healing is hate and bitterness. And, you know, when I think about the wound for the adoptee, I get my hand up here. Let's see, here's the wound, you know, right here. But right next to it grows up bitterness and unforgiveness and all kinds of awful things, and hate. So I see that, just, you know, how a vine just twists around a plant. I think that's how that develops in our lives, and we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. So it was a rude awakening to me to realize I have it, and to do something about it. Yeah, so when I talk about a okay, I've given this talk to my husband, and he says, now, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Let me explain what I mean by an unintentional relationship, okay? Because that's what can happen with adopted kids. Things start out beautifully, right? But then things change in circumstances, things change within the child, within the mom, and then they are thrown at odds with one another. It doesn't mean it will last forever, but it's common for that to happen. And it's called an unintentional relationship. It means that it was unplanned, it was unwanted, it was unscripted. So I would like you to imagine, so that you can imagine an unintentional relationship on the dance floor of adoption. Let's use that metaphor for a minute, okay? And think about the dynamics of the adoption that you're participating in. That is the adoption floor. So, you know, here's the moms. They are right there, ready to dance. I mean, they are so prepared. Marine of moms, right? They're so incredible. And so they have even predetermined their first step. It's going to be love. Love is going to be their first step. And it's going to be the love of a mama bear. They are going to just go after and do whatever needs to be for that beloved child of theirs. They are strong, they are resilient, they are beautiful, they are prepared. And so that's where the adoptive mom is. She's standing there waiting for the adopted child to come to her through adoption. So the adoptee is brought, and what do you think the adoptee will do? We adoptees might stand up and dance with our adoptive moms. We might step on our toes with passive aggressive remarks. We might run away from her. We might yell at her. Frankly, I envision adoptees sitting around on the floor, around the dance floor of adoption, just waiting for their first moms to show up. You know, we're waiting for her to show up. And there's so much to the first mom. I mean, there really is. So anyway, the relationship that I had with Rita was an unintentional relationship. My grandmother, who was a social worker in the county, and she also ran the county orphanage, she arranged my private adoption. So she brought me into my parents' home, their modest little home, and my parents could hardly wait to see me. I mean, this was their incredible day. I mean, they had waited a lifetime to be parents, and they had gone through the secret sorrows of infertility and, you know, tried so many ways. They even thought about adopting before, but when my case came up in front of my grandmother, she was sure that I was the child that they would want. So anyway, she brought me into the home and she handed me to Dad, and Dad loved every moment of it. I can still see him standing there, and he would tell me when I was old enough, he said, "You are so tiny, I could hold you in the palm of one hand." And so I loved hearing that. He said it until his dying day. He really did. He loved telling it, and I loved hearing it just as much. So that was Dad. Then Dad handed me to Retha, and I arched my back. I screamed bloody murder. I refused her touch. And that was the beginning. I mean, that was the beginning of stress between us. Not that that laid a whole groundwork or anything, but it was the beginning. And, you know, I think basically for me, it was that she didn't hear my cry. She didn't hear my cry print. That was why I was arching. Babies that arch, that means that they're in tremendous pain. And I had been in an incubator for 10 days, totally rejected by my first mom, never saw me. So I had a lot coming into the equation as well. And she had a lot too. Anyway, you know, we went on through the decades, but I always had this anger problem with my mom, and wondered why. So what happened to me a couple of years ago was really quite remarkable, I think. I began having thoughts that I didn't know where they were coming from. I mean, really weird thoughts. And I thought, I must be cracking up. I thought I was cracking up. And it was kind of like I was waking up from surgery. You know how you hear the recovery room nurses' voices muffled in the background? That's kind of what it felt like. And I just knew that something had changed, something was different. So I searched all the books, you know, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's book about the brain and how it affects everything. Couldn't find anything there. And then these, you know, these warm memories started coming into my my mind, my consciousness that I'd never had before. I didn't have any warm memories of my mom. I'm sorry to say that. I wasn't like Pam, who loved her mom so much and defended her. I was a rascal kid. But then these more memories started coming into my consciousness about mom. I could smell her best in town apple pie. I could feel her rubbing ointment on my asthmatic chest. I could see her taking care of Dinny Dinwit, my kitty cat. I'd never had those kind of thoughts before. So I thought, what is going on? I'm losing it. I'm losing it. Well, I continued on along trying to figure out what was happening with me. This was like 2 years in the making. And so anyway, I started having more and more thoughts about mom. And one day I was looking down at my hands and I thought, I wonder if I've got mom's rings, her wedding rings that she gave to me decades ago. I had carried them around from geographical move to geographical move, considered them a piece of junk, something that should have been given to Goodwill years ago. But suddenly I was thinking about the darn things, you know, and I was curious if they were still there. So I run into my bedroom, into the little drawer where I keep my costume jewelry, and I pawed through it, and sure enough, they were there. And so I put them on, and I sat down in the bed, in the bedroom, and I thought, I wonder if Dad got down on his knees when he proposed to Mom. And I wonder where he got the ring that he bought her. And what was she thinking? Was she thinking about being the beautiful bride, the blushing bride, you know, a new home, children? What were they thinking about? And you know what? Those were unfamiliar, unknown thoughts to me. They had come up from an area inside me that never, it existed before, but I was not aware of it. And so anyway, I knew that I was healing. And healing takes a lot of hard work. And so for the last 2 years, I've spent time doing, you know, I think I mentioned the Adoptee MRI, where we get ourselves under the big machine, and maybe that could be God or our higher power. We let our higher power show us where we have hated, where we've been bitter, where we have hurt people. Now, unfortunately, my mom is already gone. She's been gone 30 years. But the forgiveness that I have experienced is not relevant to time. It really isn't. And I think also what happened with me is proof that to adoptive moms, that their poured out love is never going to be forgotten. It is stored somewhere deep within your child's subconscious. And at the right time, when your child is ready to remember and to do the work, then it will happen. So that's kind of what happened to me. And so I went on this journey of healing. And that's what I want to talk about last, what brings healing. It is a crisis. What brings healing is forgiveness. And what I'd like to talk about, the method that I'm going to use in this book, is a crisis of forgiveness. And don't get all turned off because we're talking about forgiveness. I'm not going to get religious on you or anything. I'm just going to tell you that, if we really want to be free of pain from the past, that is the only power. That is the way we were made. DNA is the only way that we can be released from hate, bitterness, hurt, and all those awful things that weigh us down. It happened for me in present day life. So there was someone in my life that I hated. And remember, I didn't think I hated, but I did. I couldn't stand this person. And there was no way that I could get away from this person, him or her. I'll make it him or her. Now, don't think I'm talking about my husband, because I'm not. We've been married for 54 years. So I'm not talking about him. It was somebody else in my life. And I felt hurt in an undeserved way. I had been overlooked. And it just really, really hurt me deep down. And so there was nothing that I could do. I mean, I couldn't get out of the situation. So it was either go to the stress center and get on antipsychotic meds to keep from cracking up, or I could forgive. And when, I realized that was a choice, I thought, I can't do that. I cannot forgive. I can't forgive the hurts that I didn't deserve. And so anyway, I entered into this process called A Crisis of Forgiveness. It's drawn from a book by Lewis Smedes called Forgive and Forget, something like that. Healing the wounds that we don't deserve. Got so much out of that. But he talks about the process of healing. There are 4 steps. The first one is hurt. So we identify the hurt. And it's usually undeserved. It can even be somebody that was well-intentioned, yet hurt us. Maybe it was an adoptive parent who overindulged us, and they thought they were just giving us everything they could, but they hurt us. It's a hurt that can be spilled over, like maybe for adoptees and moms, addictions in a home, can cause spillover where you're just damaged from all the collateral around you. There are different types of hurt, and I'm not really an expert on talking about that right now, so I'm not going to get into it with too much depth. If you'd like to get more in depth, you could read that book by Lewis Smedes, S-M-E-D-E-S. But so I was painted into a corner. There was no way I could get out. And so, when we begin this journey, we might be painted into a corner. We might not be able to escape without forgiving. I think about Corrie Ten Boom when she was in concentration camp, and she was in the shower with all the other women, and there was a horrible guard that watched her gleefully in the shower. And she figured, I can never forgive that guy. Well, before she left there, she knew she had a lot of bitterness and a lot of hate. So she asked God to help her with that. So she began the process just by asking God to help her. And so years later, she was speaking in the US, and the same guy, the guard, came up to her, and he put his hand out to shake her hand. And she prayed and she said, God, I can't shake his hand. I can't stand this man. Please help me to forgive him. And the minute she put her hand out, God gave her the strength to look at that man, to realize he was a broken man and that she could wish him well. So that's one story of being painted into a corner with a hurt that you didn't deserve. For we adoptees, many of us feel like we don't deserve the hurt of being relinquished. It really hurts. And so we have to deal with that and deal with it in a healthy way. So anyway, painted into a corner. So I had to let go of control. I had to, you know how some people talk about letting go of control, letting go and letting God. And so I had to get out of the driver's seat and say, okay, God, you know, take me wherever you want me. And so I entered into a storm of emotions, just, you know, like I described, I thought I was going crazy. And so that's when the warm thoughts began about Mom. So upon reflection with all these points and all these insights and new growth, I just think about the tarnished wedding rings, the ones that I thought should have been taken to Goodwill years ago. I wonder if they were symbolic of my relationship with Letha. I wonder if I didn't give them away, because what I really wanted was a close relationship with her as my mom. I believe that's so. I really do. And if Letha were alive today, we would have an awesome relationship. We would look in one another's eyes and realize that we don't have to say a word because we're just loved incredibly. We would have gut-busting laughs, good barriers, boundaries, and we would work really hard. And that's what it takes. You know, we can't heal without really, really hard work. And so I think adoptive moms are going to lead the way in the healing. I hope their children will also be curious enough to come along. But so I can look back at the mom I once hated, I now love. The mom I wanted, the mom I rejected, I now enjoy. And the mom I thought was a loser is now my hero. So, in closing, I would just like to ask you if I could read something to you about what I love about my mom, my adoptive mom. She was determined to stay connected to me no matter what the cost. Remember, she was a Marine of moms. And it wasn't until I came home pregnant at age 20 that I even received her love. I mean, she asked me well, what happened? Did you, flunk out of school? All the questions. And when she said, are you pregnant? My knees buckled. I fell to the floor in a heap of tears, and she was right there with me, holding me. And I think that's the first time we really began to attach. But she was always there, and I call her heart a non-abandoning heart. And these are some of the things that I believe she probably said. I will do everything possible to connect with my child. I will love her even if she rejects me. I will love her without judgment, knowing her backstory. I will love her even though I am afraid. I will love her by telling her the truth about her birth family. I will keep loving her even though I receive no love in return. I will go to my grave knowing I've done my absolute best. And I believe she did. She died very suddenly. I was only 36 years old. And so it was a great loss. So that non-abandoning heart is what is so beautiful about adoptive moms. And so in closing, I'd like to just share a story about a forest ranger who was going surveying the county after there had been a fire. And he was going through all the different areas. And at one area, he kicked over a clump of smoke or whatever. And out from under that came little chicks. They ran out from underneath that clump. And that clump was their mom. She stayed there and died so that they could go free. And so that was quite a mom that she was to those chicks. And now I can say my mom was quite a mom to me. So that's my talk. I don't know where we are on time. But
Yeah, I was just going to say we're ready to go ahead and open this up for
Yeah.
questions. So this to the attendees this evening, I just wanted to share with you that this will end the recorded portion of this evening. We want to keep the questions